Some children go quiet because they have nothing to say. Gabriel Salerno went quiet because he had seen something no 4-year-old should ever have words for, and for 18 months, not one single person in that enormous, echoing house had managed to coax so much as a whisper out of him. Josie Marsh had a theory about silence. She'd built her whole career on it, 6 years of kneeling on classroom floors at eye level, with children the world had already decided to give up on. And her theory was simple. Silence wasn't the absence of a voice. It was a voice that had learned, the hard way, that speaking hadn't kept anyone safe the last time, so why bother? She was 245 pounds of patience in sensible shoes, built for exactly this kind of work, the kind that meant kneeling on hardwood floors for 45 minutes at a stretch without complaint, the kind that meant a lap wide and warm enough for a frightened child to disappear into, the kind that meant carrying a sleeping 4-year-old up 2 flights of stairs without breaking stride because doing it gently mattered more than her own back ever would. She'd learned a long time ago that most rooms decided what to think of her body before they ever bothered finding out what she was actually capable of doing with it. She was about to find out, though she didn't know it yet, exactly how much that body was capable of. Damon Salerno had knelt down to his son's level on Josie's first day, one hand on the boy's small shoulder, and said only this: "This is Miss Josie. She's going to help you find your voice again. I need you to be brave for her the way you've been brave for me." Gabriel hadn't spoken that day, but he'd taken her hand. 11 weeks in, he'd started humming while he stacked blocks. Josie hadn't counted on Vivian, and she hadn't counted on Enzo Marino either. Enzo was Damon's cousin, and the head of household security. A broad, watchful man who ran the estate's perimeter like a military installation and treated every new hire, Josie included, with the same flat, professional suspicion. He wasn't unkind. He simply hadn't decided yet whether she was a liability or an asset, and in his line of work, that particular question got decided slowly. "I don't love that she has a direct line to Damon," Josie overheard him say to another guard once, not realizing she was in earshot. "Emergency contact or not. That's a lot of trust for 11 weeks. "She's earned it," one of the other men said, kids humming again. "That's more than any of the last 3 people managed." Vivian Castellano, Damon's late wife's older sister, had earned nothing and trusted no one, which was, Josie would come to understand far too late, exactly the problem. "I really don't understand why Damon insists on this particular arrangement," Vivian said one afternoon, watching from the playroom doorway as Josie knelt beside Gabriel, sorting colored blocks by size. "Surely there are more polished candidates for a household like this one." She let her eyes travel over Josie's kneeling frame, slow, deliberate. "Someone of your proportions, crawling around on the floor of my nephew's playroom. It hardly presents the image the family wants, does it?" "Gabriel responds to consistency and warmth," Josie said evenly, not looking up. "Those don't come in a dress size, Mrs. Castellano." "We'll see how long Damon's patience lasts," Vivian said, and swept out in a cloud of perfume that lingered longer than she did. What Josie didn't know was that Vivian owed a man named Petar Vukovic $800,000, a debt inherited from her late husband's failed shipping venture, and that Petar Vukovic worked for a syndicate that did not extend payment plans. She didn't know that Vivian had spent 3 months trading small, careful pieces of the Salerno household's schedule, a gate code here, a delivery window there, in exchange for the debt's interest being frozen. And she certainly didn't know that the price for the debt's forgiveness, the entire $800,000, gone, clean, was one 4-year-old boy, delivered quietly out a side gate during a birthday party, crowded enough that nobody would notice, one small guest missing, for the first crucial 20 minutes. Gabriel's 5th birthday arrived with a bounce house, a magician hired from the city, and more balloons than Josie had ever seen in one backyard in her life. Damon had wanted it small, family only, the first real celebration since his wife had died, and Josie watched him watch his son blow out 5 candles in complete, focused silence, and understood exactly how much that ordinary afternoon meant to him. She noticed the photographer first, a wiry man with a professional camera rig, who never once, in 40 minutes, actually took a photograph of the cake table, the magician, or any of the children. He took photographs of the side gate, of the security rotation, of Gabriel. She found Enzo near the bar and pulled him aside. "That photographer," Josie said quietly, "he's not photographing the party, he's photographing your exits." Enzo's eyes flicked toward the man, assessing, and for one long second, Josie thought he believed her. Then his jaw tightened in the particular way of a man who had already decided, before she'd finished the sentence, that he wasn't going to be told his job by the nanny. "He's vetted," Enzo said. "Renata's event company cleared him a week ago. I appreciate you watching out, but I've got this handled." He hadn't looked at the man's exits again. He'd gone back to scanning the crowd for threats that looked like threats, and Josie stood there for one furious, helpless second, understanding that the only person who'd actually noticed something wrong wasn't going to be believed until it was already happening. So she didn't wait to be believed. She found Gabriel by the cake table and scooped him up mid-conversation with his cousin Mia, tucking him against her hip with the easy, practiced strength of a woman who'd carried children twice his size, up 2 flights of stairs, without breaking stride. "Real quick game," she murmured against his hair, keeping her pace unhurried so nobody watching would read panic in it. "You like games." She made it as far as the French doors before Vivian stepped directly into her path, smiling too wide, one hand already reaching. "Let me take him for a moment, sweetheart," Vivian said. "Too bright, too fast. I have a present inside." "I've got him," Josie said, stepping around her, keeping the boy's face turned away from those outstretched hands. "He's overstimulated. He needs a quiet minute." Vivian's fingers closed hard around Josie's forearm, and for the first time in 11 weeks, the mask came all the way off. "Give him to me," she hissed, low enough that none of the party guests 40 feet away would ever hear it. "No," Josie said, and turned, and walked fast into the house, and that was the exact moment everything stopped being a suspicion and became a war. She didn't make it to the study. Vivian caught her in the long hallway outside the pool house, and this time she wasn't alone. The photographer was with her, camera rig discarded, and a second man, Josie had never seen before, stood at the hallway's far end, blocking the way back to the party, blocking the sound of 40 guests and a magician's music from ever reaching this corridor at all. "Petar wants the boy now," the photographer said flatly, not to Josie, to Vivian. "You said this would be clean." "It will be," Vivian snapped, though her composure had started to fracture at the edges, sweat beading along her hairline. "Just take him. She isn't going to do anything stupid." Josie backed a step, Gabriel's small heartbeat hammering against her chest, and felt the wall of the hallway hit her shoulder blades. There was nowhere left to go. "I'm not giving him to you," Josie said, her voice shaking now, but not breaking, not once, not to any of you. The second man moved first. He crossed the hallway fast, reaching for Gabriel with the flat, professional indifference of a man collecting cargo, and Josie did the only thing left available to a woman with a 4-year-old in her arms and no room left to run. She twisted her whole body around him, curling herself over Gabriel like a shell, her back to the room, absorbing whatever came next, so it never reached the boy at all. Vivian screamed something, Panicked, desperate, the sound of a plan collapsing in real time, and the second man's hand came up holding something that caught the hallway light in one cold, metal flash. The sound tore through that narrow hallway like the whole house had cracked in half. Josie felt it hit high in her right thigh. A bright, obliterating shock that buckled her knee out from under her, and she went down hard against the wall, still curled entirely around Gabriel, still holding him, because letting go had simply never once occurred to her as an option. Gabriel felt her whole body flinch and drop. He felt the wet heat spreading against her leg, where he was pressed, and something in him, some small, buried, desperate part of him that had been silent for 18 months, tried to claw its way up and out all at once. His mouth opened, his whole small body strained with the effort of it, his face twisting, a sound building in his throat that wanted, more than anything in the world, to become a word. Nothing came out. Boo-hoo! Just a broken, wordless wail, raw and terrified. And then the tears, and then his whole small body shaking against her chest, sobbing without a single syllable to hold on to, because the trauma had opened the door, and terror had slammed it right back shut before anything could get through. Josie didn't have time to grieve that. She didn't have time for anything except the 245 pounds of her own body, wounded and shaking, doing the only job it had ever needed to do. She kept Gabriel pinned against her chest with one arm, and with the other, blood already slicking her fingers, she wrenched her phone from her pocket and hit the one number saved to speed dial. He answered on the first ring. "Someone shot me," Josie said, her voice tearing sideways with adrenaline and pain. Vivian sold Gabriel to a man named Petar. There are 3 of them in the pool house hallway, and I don't know how much longer I can hold this door. There was a silence on the line that lasted exactly 1 second and felt like the end of the world. Josie heard, for the first time in 11 weeks, Damon Salerno's voice actually break. "Say that again," he said, and it wasn't calm at all this time. It wasn't the low, even register she'd learned to read as danger. It was raw, and it was terrified, and underneath it was something that had gone past danger entirely, into a place with no name. "Get here," Josie said, gritting through the pain radiating up from her thigh, pressing her free palm hard against the wound, the way 6 years of first aid training had carved into her hands, without her ever having to think about it. "I've got him. I'm not letting go. Just get here." He didn't stalk this time. He didn't walk with careful, deliberate menace, the way she'd watched him move through every ordinary crisis of the last 11 weeks. Damon Salerno ran, and Enzo ran with him, and 6 more men ran behind them, and the temperature of that entire house didn't just drop, it collapsed, all at once, into something with teeth. The second man in the hallway got 2 shots off toward the noise before Enzo put him down for good. The photographer threw his hands up fast enough to survive the next 10 seconds, which was the only smart decision he made all day. Vivian didn't run. She simply stood frozen against the far wall, watching her entire carefully built story collapse in real time, watching Damon Salerno round the corner and take in the scene in a single, silent, catastrophic second. His nanny on the floor, bleeding through her hand, pressed hard against her own leg. His son screaming without words into her shoulder. His late wife's sister standing 8 feet away from the wreckage of both of them. He didn't yell. Josie would remember that detail for the rest of her life. That even here, even now, he didn't yell. He didn't need to. He crossed the hallway and dropped to his knees in front of them, one hand cupping the back of Gabriel's head, the other going to Josie's wound with a speed and steadiness that told her, even through the pain, that this was not the first gunshot wound this particular hand had ever tended to. "You're okay," he said, to both of them at once, his voice shaking in a way she'd never once heard from him. "You're both okay. I've got you." He looked up, once, at Vivian, and Josie watched something in his face go somewhere she never wanted to see again. "You sold him," Damon said. 2 words. His voice had gone past cold into something with no temperature left at all. "I didn't have a choice," Vivian said, her composure gone entirely, tears streaking through her makeup. "Petar was going to kill me. Damon, you don't understand what he does to people who don't pay." "I understand exactly what he does," Damon said, rising slowly to his feet, leaving Enzo's hands pressed now where his own had been against Josie's leg. "That's precisely why I know exactly what to do with you." "Damon, please," she whispered. "I'm your family. You stopped being my family the moment you let a man point a gun at my son," Damon said. He didn't move toward her. He didn't have to. 2 of his men already had. "You owe Petar Vukovic $800,000. He tilted his head, and the terrible stillness in his voice made even Enzo go quiet beside her. "I'm not going to pay that debt for you, Vivian. I'm going to deliver you to collect it personally. And I'm going to make absolutely certain he knows exactly how badly you failed him tonight. Because a man like Petar does not forgive failure quietly, and he is not going to be gentle about explaining that to you." The sound Vivian made then wasn't a word at all. It was closer to what Gabriel had made, wordless and animal, and entirely too late. "Take her," Damon said, and turned away before they'd even finished dragging her out, because there was nothing left in that hallway that mattered to him except the 2 people bleeding and sobbing on the floor in front of him. Josie never learned exactly what happened to Vivian Castellano after that night. She learned only, weeks later, from a single clipped sentence out of Enzo, that Petar Vukovic had been extremely, personally thorough about collecting what he was owed, and that it had taken considerably longer than a debt collection usually did, and that nobody in the Salerno organization had felt the need to ask for details beyond that. It was, everyone seemed to silently agree, the most catastrophic possible ending anyone could have designed for her, and not one person in that house lost a single night's sleep over it. The ambulance took 11 minutes to arrive, and Josie spent every one of them with her arms still locked around Gabriel, refusing every offer to let someone else hold him, because some promises, she'd decided somewhere in that hallway with a bullet in her leg, didn't get to be broken just because the danger was technically over. She woke up in a hospital bed 2 hours after surgery, to find Damon in the chair beside her, Gabriel asleep against his chest, one of the boy's small hands still fisted tight in the fabric of Josie's hospital gown, even in sleep, like he'd made the exact same promise she had, and had no intention of letting go of it either. "Hey," Josie rasped. Damon's head came up fast, and the look on his face, raw, undone, entirely without its usual armor, told her more than any speech could have. "You took a bullet for my son," he said quietly, so he didn't wake Gabriel. "You held a door shut with your own body until I got there." He reached out, gently, and tucked a strand of hair back behind her ear. The same careful, deliberate touch she'd felt from him a dozen times before. Gentle enough, she thought, to apologize for every terrible thing that Hand had done that night, to make sure Vivian answered for it. "I don't have words for what I owe you, Josie. You don't owe me anything," she whispered. "That's not how this works." Gabriel stirred against his father's chest. His eyes opened slowly, found Josie's face across the small distance of the hospital room, and something in his expression crumpled entirely. Relief and fear and love, all colliding at once in a 4-year-old's face that had no practice at all, holding that much feeling in silence anymore. His mouth opened. This time, nothing stopped the sound from coming all the way out. "Josie," he said, small and rusty, and absolutely certain, the first full word he'd spoken to another human being in 18 months, and he said her name like it was the only word in the world worth using it on. Josie's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over before she could stop them, and Damon made a sound she'd never heard from him before, something between a laugh and something breaking wide open, pressing his forehead against his son's hair, while his other hand found Josie's and held on like he never planned to let go of either one of them again. "You stayed," Gabriel said, the words coming easier now, like a door that had finally, truly, been given permission to open. "You didn't let go." "Never," Josie said, her voice cracking on the word. "I told you that. On my very first day. I meant it." 6 months later, at Gabriel's first day of kindergarten, a small crowd of other parents gathered by the school gate to watch a little boy chatter non-stop about dinosaurs to anyone who'd listen, his hand held tight in the hand of a woman, the whole household now simply called family. A thin white scar, visible just above her knee, where a hospital gown once used to be, and his father, standing a few feet back, watching both of them with the same undefended look he'd worn in a hospital room. Josie Marsh had spent her whole career believing that silence was a voice waiting for permission to speak again. She just hadn't expected that finding his voice would nearly cost her everything, or that she'd have done it again in a heartbeat without a second's hesitation. If Gabriel finally sang her name, had you catching your breath, hit that like button and subscribe. Because sometimes, the bravest thing in the whole story is a woman who simply refuses to let go, no matter what it costs her.